Are you struggling to secure the role that you want? Submitting endless job applications but never hearing back? Or maybe you're just not quite sure what path you want to take in tech. Keep listening to hear Claire Alexander's answers for all your career quandaries. Welcome to Programmable, where we talk to tech luminaries to help you with your career. Programmable is brought to you by JDoodle, the AI coding suite for learning and building together. Try our easy-to-use online development environment and you can start coding in 88 programming languages in seconds. I'm Lucas Hakewill, and today we're speaking with Claire Alexander about careers in tech scale-ups and startups. Claire gets to see it from both sides, as a HR and talent advisor for tech companies, as well as a career coach herself. She's even an ex-employment lawyer. Claire teaches job seekers how to get hired and accelerate their careers in tech startups and scale-ups, and how to get things done faster using AI. She wants to give back to over 1,000 people who need support in securing work, and to over 500 people in sticky work situations. I'm here to ask Claire all of the juicy questions about what it takes to build a career in tech. Claire, welcome.
Hi, Lucas. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'd love to start with, I guess, from your perception, thinking about entry-level people or people early in their career in tech. What would you say are sort of some of the most important roles for them to be looking at?
Yeah, look, great question. Look, I'd say AI, and AI type roles. But look, no, jokes aside, I think my top 5 would be positions in data science, insights and analytics, product management, tech sales, and then, in relation to AI, currently, anything related to AI. So AI prompt engineering, AI marketing. I think that's really going to be the focus over the next sort of 10 to 15 years.
Absolutely. So even if I'm not necessarily studying to be a software engineer, even if I want a role in marketing or in sales, in tech, I kind of need to be conversant with how AI works.
Absolutely. And I actually read a book recently, and it was called AI Superpowers. I'm not sure if you've read it by, I think it's Kung Fu Lee.
No, I haven't.
And yeah, look, it's a fantastic book. And essentially he predicts that in the next 10 to 15 years, that 42% of the workforce is going to be made redundant as a result of AI. So I think, that sort of brings me back full circle to where I started my initial answer about everything AI. I think if you can be as conversant in AI as possible in any role which you do, no matter where your career trajectory takes you, I think that's really going to set you up for success and future job stability in the long term.
Yeah, okay. I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I need to work harder to build AI into some of my workflows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all are. And I think it's really a pivotal time in the market right now. I think we're really on the precipice of just the world changing dramatically, almost like when we had the dot-com bubble boom. And I think that's where we are with AI. And I think for people starting out now in their careers, it really is an exciting time just to embrace something completely new. And you're really entering into the unknown, right? Over the next sort of 10, 20 years, I just would be so curious as to see what that's going to look like for everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fascinating journey. I'd love to pull into a couple of those roles that you mentioned. We spoke to David Wang about careers in product management, and we'll be speaking to Jamil Rahman about careers in tech sales. So 2 great episodes that I'd really encourage listeners to listen to. We haven't spoken to anyone about those data science and data analytics roles, but I'd love to hear a bit about what do you see as the pathways for someone you might be thinking about a career in data?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, data science is quite vast, of course, and the same with insights and analytics, but they sort of feed into each other. I think it really is about going for those junior level associate data science positions, whether it's machine learning, NLP. There's a whole vast number of areas. And sorry, Lisa, I should mention, I'm definitely not a data science expert here.
Look for the junior opportunities that help you get your foot in the door.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
and so if I picture a job in tech sales, the day-to-day is going to look very different from a job in software engineering versus a job in data science. And these might suit people whilst they may have similar technical skills requirements, they're probably going to suit different personalities.
100%.
Do you have any advice for the kind of questions that people should ask themselves when they're trying to decide what their path might be in tech?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people really, really struggle with this, and not just at the beginning of their career, throughout their career. And I think what I'd really get them to think about is, what do you actually love doing? What really gets your juices flowing? What interests you? What makes you want to get out of bed? And then really thinking about, what are you good at? Because if you combine those two, I think you're going to have a much stronger idea as to, what is the realistic path that you want to go down, because you're generally going to be more successful in a role where you have those strong skills and interests. Moving forward, it's definitely going to set you up for success. The other thing I also ask people to think about is, when you're asking that question of yourself, what are my skills and interests? The first thing that comes to your mind is your actual answer, because what often happens is that we don't realize that a lot of our thinking is by what society is telling us to do, or what our parents actually, raised us to think about. So it's the first thing that pops into your mind when you think about your skills and interests, is generally, I think, how you know what to focus on. And look, if you're really struggling, think about ChatGPT being your friend. And I always speak to a lot of my coaching candidates and tell them to do this. But as ChatGPT, the question of, I want to try and work out what my top 10 interests are. What are my top skills? Please ask me 10 questions to help me really work out what they are, because it's actually much harder than it sounds.
And having someone or something to bounce off and answer questions to can be
Oh,
so helpful,
friendly.
right?
Yeah, definitely. And ChatGPT can almost be like your sparring partner. And, if there's something that you think, oh, look, I don't necessarily agree with that, or let's ask me more questions to find out more about this, I think is definitely a really good place to start.
Something that I've noticed as a trend is pretty much everyone I speak to on this podcast, everyone who's had a really interesting career in tech, they didn't quite end up where they expected. So the plans from where they started didn't necessarily end up being where they landed. And I think that I find that really comforting, because it gives me the sense that even if you make a decision that doesn't quite fit your skills or interests, you sort of change over time and you discover what the path is right for you. Has that been your experience, Claire?
100%. So my story was, well, I've changed probably 5 times my career now. So yes, I'm definitely testament to what you're saying there. So started off as an employment lawyer, did the law for sort of 6, 7 years, wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to continue doing. So I thought I'd go and do a bit of travel, ended up in Australia for visa reasons, fell into recruitment. Then I ended up moving into tech because of my employment legal background. That fits very well with HR. Then you've got the recruitment piece, pull all that together, moved into tech, which, I'm so grateful for, and then sort of pivoted into various different positions within tech organizations, and then ultimately now a consultant and career coach. So yeah, look, my journey has been one that's evolved over the last 20 years or so, showing my age now. And, I'm really thankful that I've ended up in the tech space, because it's taken me a long time to find my place, so to speak. But I just absolutely love it. It really does get me out of bed, and every day is different. Look, it isn't for everybody, startups and scale ups, but that's why it's really important. If I could to sort of really think in the early days what you want to do, what your key interests are, because I know definitely that if I could do my time again, although, having the legal background has definitely helped me, to build out my career, is that I would have probably done something very different if I could do it all again, if I actually was clear on what my real interests were and what my strengths were.
I can say exactly the same thing. I probably would have studied software engineering back in the day if I'd really been clear on that. It's really hard to know at age 18, 19, really
Oh,
where
yeah.
you're going to end up.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned startups and scale ups are not for everyone. How could I make that decision point or understand a bit more about myself to know, could I be a fit for working in a startup, or should I pursue more of a corporate career?
Yeah, look, again, it's doing that sort of deep dive into yourself and thinking about what you enjoy doing. Startups are renowned for, lots of pivotal changes. You'll be going into a different direction each day, potentially. No day is the same, generally very unstructured. You've got to move at an incredibly fast pace. Compared to the corporate world. And obviously, some corporate businesses still operate like that. But of course, you're more likely to have more resources available, or more support in the early stages of your career. Whereas a startup, you're very much sort of put into a role and, just left to run with it and be highly autonomous. So it's really about, are you somebody that enjoys that fluidity, or do you need sort of a structured approach? Those probably the two questions that I would ask, which will help you determine, which way that you want to go.
That's really great advice, Claire. I would totally echo that. Just having moved into startups from working in bigger organizations, you just have to expect less structure and find a way to be comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think it's definitely a very exciting career path, but everybody is different in what they're looking for out of their career.
Claire, for someone who might be submitting job applications in a technical field, and they're not having much luck, maybe they're not hearing back on their applications, or they're getting knocked back at the interview stage, do you have any advice on what they should focus on? Assuming their tech skills are up to scratch, how could they try to get a little bit further along in that process?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great question. And the majority of my clients actually approach me initially with that concern that, they're making endless job applications, they're not hearing back, or as I say, yeah, you go into an interview and unfortunately you're not progressing to that final offer stage. I think the key is, firstly, is instead of sending out hundreds of applications, it's super important to take a very targeted approach. So, make sure that your resume is tailored specifically to that particular job and that company. Now, it may seem obvious, but, as somebody who's probably seen over 100,000 resumes now in my time, and I've made over 1,000 hires, the amount of people that actually don't do that and send a resume that is quite different to, the job vacancy is very familiar to me. I think, people really need to start thinking about their resume like it's marketing and sales collateral, because that's what it is. A lot of people write a resume saying that, these are my day-to-day responsibilities and this is my education and this is what I'm looking for. But that's, you need to change your mindset and how you're thinking about it, because really it's a document that is a teaser to a hiring manager or a recruiter picking up and thinking, wow, I really want to speak to this person and I want to find out more about them. So every time you write your resume, you need to think along the lines of, is this actually a document that is doing me justice and is going to get somebody excited enough to pick up the phone? The other way of thinking about your job search, whether it's you're doing your resume or your LinkedIn profile or doing an interview, is thinking about, when a hiring manager is hiring a role, what is the problem that they're trying to solve? Because every time they're hiring for somebody, it's because that there's a problem. So it may well be that, I don't know, the hiring manager might be overworked, so you're going to help them with the workload, or maybe it's a particular skill that they don't have, and it's a gap that you're therefore going to fill. So it's really important to understand or start to think as if I was a hiring manager right now, looking at my resume, would I hire me? So the hiring manager is going to be thinking, if I hire this person, are they going to help me to generate revenue for this company? Or are they going to help me? The second question is, are they going to help me be able to reduce costs? And thirdly, is this person going to help me save time? And then finally, can they hit the ground running? If you can basically put in your resume all of those things and then say that at an interview as well, you're going to have a much better opportunity at being successful, because that's all a hiring manager wants. They're thinking about revenue. And I know this is probably a little bit different to how sort of career coaches generally think about things, but that is all a business, is around for, generating revenue. So if you can show that you're going to make revenue or save them costs, and you can do this by, streamlining operations, or it could be, more clicks on a website, whatever it is, or clean code, and deploying code much more quickly, whatever that, if you can actually prove that to a hiring manager, they're more likely going to be able to pick up the phone and say, let's have a chat. I hope that sort of answers sort of the question a bit. Yeah.
I love that advice so much, Claire. So, it's tempting to think of a resume as this artifact that just describes me as an individual. And of course, it's the same for every job application, because I'm the same person. But actually, we need to think about who is reading this. And every single role is solving a different problem for a different business. So we actually need to tailor our application materials to try to convince the hiring manager that we're going to solve their unique problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, going back to our old friend ChatGPT, again, a real hot tip, especially, well, for anybody actually, not just people sort of starting out in their journey, is to say you have a job advert, copy and paste that into ChatGPT, and then say, if I was the hiring manager for this particular job advert, what is the biggest problem that I am trying to solve? Okay. So that will then give you a very succinct problem that a hiring manager is trying to fill. And then all you've got to do is then try to work out after that, okay, well, how do I make sure that this is coming out in my resume or my LinkedIn profile or interview?
Absolutely. So rely on friend ChatGPT. Are there elements of the job application process where I shouldn't use ChatGPT?
Look, good question. Again, I think you can actually use ChatGPT for everything. And look, a lot of people get really concerned about using ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is only as good as the person using it and the questions that you're asking it. So If, of course, you write a resume and say, hey, can you just do me a resume for a product manager role? Of course, you should not just use that document and send it out. And recruiters and hiring managers are obviously going to now be very clear on what is actually created by ChatGPT.
They can tell,
So,
right?
yeah, absolutely. So the way I would use it is if I'm writing a resume and I don't know, say I'm a recruiter and I hire over 1,000 people every year with my team, but I can't think of the right words to sort of sell myself, then I would say, hey, this is the kind of thing that I want to write for this bullet point. I also want to quantify it, and I want to sound succinct, and I want it to be impactful for this problem that my hiring manager is trying to solve. Please, can you rewrite this for me? That's how I would be using ChatGPT for your resume. But yeah, just to go back to your question, you don't ever want to use ChatGPT to just do something for you as a document without providing any real input.
Yeah, okay, because it will make a long document if you don't give it the sufficient inputs, but it might not have very useful information in it.
Absolutely. And, I've tried many, many times, especially when the new models sort of come out to see if, ChatGPT is doing things differently, but you definitely don't want to just use a resume that is created by ChatGPT. Yeah.
I really like the tip that you gave as well around getting it to ask you questions. And so this is a really nice way of, if you're just struggling with executive function, or you're having a moment where you've got a blank page and you just can't think what to put, tell it to ask you a bunch of questions that you can answer with your own data that
Yeah.
will help it to formulate an initial draft for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes what I've done is I've even copied and pasted a resume and the job description. And then I've said, look, is there anything that you think that I'm missing here? And then obviously it can tell you. And then you could say, look, I think I've done these things, but I'm not sure if I can remember. Can you actually ask me questions that might jog my memory to see if I have these experience and skills today? So you really have to just use it as if it's a career coach. I'm doing myself out of a job here, but how you would ask a human is how you need to, be asking ChatGPT or
That's
any
really
other AI. Yeah.
that's really great, and you're getting it to do some of your emotional labor for you.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so you're working as a career coach. One of the common issues you work with people on is, hey, I'm putting all of these submissions in, I'm not getting anything back. What are some of the other kind of most common issues that might prompt someone to want to come see a career coach?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I think the interview pace. I think a lot of people really struggle with that. And I do a lot of mock interviews. And again, especially in Australia with tall poppy syndrome, is that people aren't great at selling themselves. And again, it's, just starting to try and think like you're selling, you are a product, you are a service. So you've got to think about selling yourself, right? You're sort of a business of one, so to speak. A lot of people struggle to that end. I think the other thing that people come to me a lot about is, like we talked about in the early stage of this session, is that, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Like this doesn't feel right to me right now. I feel like I should be pivoting, or, I get quite a lot from people that are, sort of in the later ends of their career, actually more senior, to say, look, been doing this for 10, 15 years. This is not what I want to be doing anymore, but I don't know what to do next. How can I convert my skills and transfer them into a different role? What does that role even look like for me? And then I think finally, but not so much, is, the LinkedIn profile optimization piece. And I think that's probably now in this day and age, almost just as important as your resume. I know there's a lot out there where people say you don't have to worry about your resume anymore. absolutely not correct. Reason being is that people are still making decisions currently by resumes through job boards. And even if somebody spoke to you on LinkedIn, via networking, they're still probably going to ask you for, a resume. But the LinkedIn optimization piece is hopefully going to help you build your brand. So, what you represent, what type of role that you're looking for, and then hopefully people will be able to reach out to you. I know that people definitely now need to start putting that as a hyperlink on their resume currently, because a recruiter is just going to click on that and they're going to want to see that your LinkedIn profile is in alignment with your resume, because people can make very quick decisions when they have those visuals there as well, right? So I do speak to people about, building their brand online and creating more of an audience. It's all about, having an online brand presence, especially if you're a more senior person. If you have more online presence, with Instagram, Facebook, etc., it's all about that. And people make judgments based on that now.
And if, as a hiring manager, you're trying to decide between two candidates, or maybe you have 20 applications in front of you and you only have time to call 5 of them, you're going to have to make a decision based on that brand. You can't actually rely on a long conversation with someone to understand them. You need to be able to make a quick decision, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just for context, especially larger companies, a recruiter might have 20 roles on, and each role might have a minimum of a couple of hundred applications, and they need to create shortlists within 5 days. Then you're looking at hundreds and hundreds, it's over 1,000 applications that they've got to get through. So, you need to, do everything that you can to make it easier for them to make quick decision, because at the end of the day, time is money, right? So
For sure. So part of my brand might be my technical skills, and that might be about sharing my GitHub and showing all of the commits I've been making, or sharing some side projects. Is that it for technical roles? Is it important to share a bit of personality with recruiters, or something outside of the tech skills?
Look, in an interview, yes. And I think I need to differentiate between the two. Again, a lot of people try to show personality in a resume. You don't need to be doing that. Reason being is that a hiring manager at that stage is only making a decision on your technical capabilities. So can this person do the job? And can this person make me money, save me time, right? So, however, at interview, that's when you need to share your personality, because the hiring manager is making a decision not only on your technical capabilities, but also, of course, can they work for you? Can they work with you? Can they see you working well with the team? It's that whole culture fit piece, right? So it's really important to be authentic and show who you are. So the hiring manager can make the right decision about whether you're going to be the right person in the role in their team. But also not just that, you need to be able to show your personality so you can build a rapport with them, so you can make the right decision for you. And I think, let's not forget that. I think, we can get very caught up in, well, is the hiring manager going to hire me? It's a two-way street. It's about you making the decision about them and whether your personality actually is going to work with them long term as well, because we spend all day, every day with these people and in this job. So it's imperative that, you're going to have a great working relationship with them and moving forward.
There are some circumstances where maybe you should decline a job offer, or maybe you should be looking a little bit further ahead. Okay, I'm really interested in that aspect of, how do I audition the job? I'm being auditioned and I'm being interviewed. How do I decide whether the role that I'm applying for, that I'm interviewing for, whether that might be a good fit? What might be some questions to ask?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great question. So some more tricky questions that you might want to ask is, if I was your hiring manager, how would I describe you? So if I was your manager, or have you talk to me about the turnover in the team? What does that look like? Or what are some performance management issues that you might have faced in the team? How do you manage somebody who's underperforming? You almost want to put that sort of hiring manager on the spot, because then you're going to get the real truth of the matter. And you can sort of make a decision by how they answer that question. And you can make a probably a pretty good decision on that. Look, aside from that, I think you can always reach out to people, in the industry. I think good recruiters are a good source of truth. You can say, look, I'm interviewing for this company. Have you got any intel around culture? There's nothing to stop you from also reaching out to people on LinkedIn to say, hey, I've been offered a job here. I'd love to know more about, what it's like to work there. You can also ask in an interview process to meet other people in the team, because that's going to give you a very good idea. It doesn't have to be part of an interview process. You could say, look, can I have a bit of a meet and greet, spend some time with the team just to sort of see how we click. But I think, we quite often get caught up in, like I just mentioned before, that whole, look, do they want me? Do they want to hire me? But it's really important that you sort of take the time to do your due diligence. Another thing, look at Glassdoor. Now, Glassdoor is a bit of a tricky one, because it's not always a source of truth, in that, unfortunately, and I don't know, Lucas, if you're aware of this, sometimes people, are asked to put on good reviews. If there's a bad review, then all of a sudden you might see 5 fantastic reviews go up the next day. It's all about changing the rating. But what you want to do is, over a few years period, is look to see if there's any patterns. So, for example, there's, bullying, for example. It may well be that has been mentioned and it's hiding between all these fantastic reviews a few times over a few years. So, that maybe there could be, a bullying culture there. So it's really about doing your research and doing a deep dive into that. And final point to mention is that just because it's Google or it's Canva, Atlassian, doesn't automatically mean, because it's this big brand, that is where you should go. And try to avoid sort of making decisions purely based on how great this is going to look on your resume. I think it's, do that due diligence, irrespective of the brand, to see if it's going to be the right fit for you.
I love that advice so much, and particularly I've found it really helpful in the past, reaching out to people who are in that team that I'm going for, or even people who've left the team, who may feel a little more comfortable to be candid about their experiences. It's been so helpful to me. Claire, you love using AI to get stuff done. I know that you really advocate for candidates to use ChatGPT to help them almost as a quasi career coach. What are the tools that you love using, or are there any other really killer use cases for AI that you're loving?
Yeah, look, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to AI, the AI stuff. I actually like building AI chatbots in my own time. And I use software called VoiceFlow. So that's a really good software to help to, people that aren't techie to build those chatbots. So because I do a lot of HR stuff, I might sort of put, loads of policies in there and create a bit of a knowledge base. And then I can say, hey, I want to submit an expense. How do I do this? And then you can just literally type that in, and you don't have to read a whole expense related policy document, or, it could be to do with onboarding or offboarding. So I love using that. I think make.com. I don't know if you've used make.com, Lucas, but that's a great
yes,
as well to get all of your processes sort of more automated. Look, I could go on and on in terms of sort of, social and content strategy, etc. This like Jasper AI, love using their software as well. So, if you're in that content space, it can be really, really helpful too, to generate content. And the design side, I love Midjourney as well. So, sorry, Canva, but I don't know. I think Midjourney,
Midjourney's still waiting for you.
Well, yeah. So, I think those are my top few that I use at the
That's
moment.
tremendous, Claire. I've just started to explore that sort of retrieval and generation of building those kind of chatbots. I started by scraping some transcripts from my favorite podcast, Lenny's podcast, which is a great one about product and tech. I want to build a chatbot where I can ask the guests for advice. It's still pretty loose at the moment. It's hallucinating a lot, making up quotes, so it needs a bit of work. But I'm really excited to explore that space more too.
Yeah. No, and look, as per what we discussed earlier, I think it's sort of the way the world's going. So for all people starting out in their career, I think it's a really good space to get involved with ASAP.
For sure. Speaking of podcasts, do you have any recommendations for resources that listeners might want to look at if they're pursuing a career in tech? Books, websites, courses, podcasts?
So look, there's a podcast that I listen to called the Startup Podcast. Really love listening to those guys. I'm a big advocate for Dexter Cousins, who does the FinTech Chatter podcast, where he speaks to lots of founders about the fintech industry. There's lots of fascinating information there, not just only from a fintech space, but it's about, tech founders and their journeys and how they start up and scale up their organizations. In terms of courses, look, I'm a big advocate for Udemy. It's so cheap and you can get some really good stuff on there. So I think that's always a good starting point. Just from a foundational point of view, you could do like a product manager engineering course, or, learn Python or whatever it is. You can find everything and anything on there. So I think those are a good starting point. Look, LinkedIn Premium, I think it's about $40 or something a month. But look, they have extensive resources now in training as well, both from an educational standpoint and, being able to build your career over time. So whether it's leadership skills, or it could be even software coding skills, there's just everything on there too.
Absolutely. And if listeners are interested to keep in touch with what you're doing, or maybe even engage you as a career coach, how can they find you, Claire?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, or I also have a website, which is www.coachclaire.co. That's .co, not .com. And then I have a load of free resources on there from, optimizing your resume, LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn. So you can find that there. And then you can also reach out to me on there if you do want any coaching support as well.
Fantastic. We'll share those links in the show notes. Claire, it's been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lucas. It's been great to chat.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. A huge shout out to Claire Alexander for her insights about building a tech career. If you're ready to code, you can go to JDoodle.com and start coding in 88 languages today. And we'll share all of those links and resources that Claire mentioned in the podcast in the show notes. We'll see you next time on Programmable. Make sure you hit subscribe to get notified when we release new episodes.